welcome to the Cook County Bar Association's Live on CAN TV. Today I will be your host. My name is Mika Thompson, and to my right and your left is the distinguished attorney, Attorney Lewis Powell III, and he is our guest. He will be discussing real estate, and this will be part two. Last week we began our conversation regarding real estate and just the basic fundamentals regarding a real estate sale in the area of residential home sales. So today we will continue that discussion. We take this opportunity, the Cook County Bar Association takes this opportunity every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. to discuss legal issues that are being discussed in the media, in the newspaper, and just legal issues that are of importance to the Chicagoland community. Please free to call us at the number that appears at the bottom of your screen. That's 312-738-1060. This is a live call-in show, and we always welcome any questions that the viewing audience has about real estate or any topic of legal issue, particularly real estate for today's show. You can also watch this show and other shows that we have previously taped with the CAN TV station on the web, www.cantv.org/live. And or you can also Google past shows that the Cook County Bar Association has sponsored. Myself and other members of the Cook County Bar Association, to which Attorney Powell is also a member and a past president, aren't you?
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for remembering.
And members that have discussed a variety of legal issues that are of importance to the Chicagoland community and the nation as a whole. So, the Cook County Bar Association is the oldest association of African American judges and lawyers in the country. We are so blessed to have this opportunity to speak with one of our more distinguished members of the bar. Attorney Powell, would you mind giving the viewing audience a little information about your background as an attorney here in Chicago?
First of all, I think you elaborating a lot on distinguished part, but anyway, I'll take it. Appreciate it. Just fast forward, I work with Harold Washington's administration, my fraternity brother Eugene Sawyer's administration. Prior to that, I worked for the Village of Robbins. I have a background in city planning, small-time real estate developer. I've taught at John Marshall Law School in the area of fair housing since 1994.
Very good. And you're currently teaching at law school right now.
Yeah, John Marshall.
John Marshall.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
you mentioned that.
Right.
Okay.
Semester's about to end.
Semester is about to end.
I'm working on the finals as we speak.
Okay. We also want to inform the viewers that if you have a legal issue that we're not discussing right now, you feel free to contact us at the Cook County Bar Association's website. That's www.cookcountybar.org. You will click on Lawyer Referral, and there is a list of attorneys that are members of the Cook County Bar Association, their areas of practice, and their contact information. And you can contact them directly. You can also contact the Cook County Bar Association at its phone number 312-630-1157. Push 21 at the prompt, and you will be transferred to a Cook County Bar Association staff member who will be able to give you information over the phone about lawyers that are practicing in the area that your question pertains to. Okay, so let's now begin our conversation. We discussed a lot last week about the real estate sale. So just to briefly get the viewing audience up to speed for part two, could you briefly describe the process that is involved with a real estate sale in terms of, the offer, the acceptance, and so
Sure.
forth?
What I want to point out to our audience that, excuse me, still fighting the cold. What I want to point out to my audience is that, is that the initial offer is just an offer until it's accepted. It's really a bid. And when you make the offer, the seller well, actually, the seller can make a counteroffer. And the seller can make a counteroffer in terms of the price that he or her wishes to sell the property. And then once you get an acceptance, that touches off some key time frames. Ladies and gentlemen, most contracts will have that the attorney review time period is 5 business days.
Now, let me stop you
Sure.
really briefly. So when you say offer, is that the offer, does that come in the form of the real estate contract, or is it the acceptance that is the form?
The offer, just like in basic contracts in law school, it's an offer until it's accepted.
Right.
Okay, when it's accepted, that's when the ball starts rolling in terms of a series of events. The first series of events is usually keyed off with the attorney review. Attorney review usually is 5 business days, and it kicks off upon the acceptance of the contract, not the offer.
Okay.
So in the 5 business days following the acceptance of the contract, either side being the buyer's attorney or the seller's attorney, can make proposed modifications.
Gotcha.
And in those modifications, they can make modifications in terms of tax proration, make modifications in terms of time frame to get the mortgage, make modification terms from time frames to close on the mortgage. Mika, what I want to point out to our ladies, to the audience, key in on 3 key dates. One key date is most contracts will put you on notice that you have X amount of days to apply for your mortgage.
Right.
That's point number 1.
So when they get the sales contract and they give it to the buyer, right? And it's not the end of the conversation. We need to be clear.
It's just beginning.
It's just beginning.
Okay.
So all those different terms
Right.
are may be stipulated
Right.
in that sales
Right.
contract, but that is not set in stone because of this attorney review period.
Right, it can be changed, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have a date certain that you have to apply for the mortgage. Point number 2. That's point number 1. Point number 2, there's gonna be a mortgage contingency date. And what are we talking about? The date that you have to have your mortgage commitment. Not with any conditions. A mortgage commitment means simply that you are approved for X amount of money, at X amount of interest rate, at X amount of terms of years to pay it back
For that property.
for that property. Point number 3, ladies and gentlemen, is the closing date, okay? So, be mindful of those dates, okay? The closing date will fluctuate because most people will give you time to close as long as they are certain that you got your mortgage commitment.
Okay, so we'll come back to that closing because there's a lot of other different things that we, paperwork and different things that need to be explained so
Exactly.
that we are clear about what goes on in the closing. So one of those paperworks, a lot of people don't even realize because it really only shows up towards the closing is the HUD settlement. Can you give a
Sure.
piece, that's like a brief understanding regarding this,
Excuse me.
what that is?
Reader's Digest version. The HUD settlement statement will have the purchase price. The HUD settlement statement will have the earnest money that's been deposited. It'll have the realtor's commission if there's a realtor's involved. It'll have the amount of your mortgage. It will have your credits. And what are your credits, ladies and gentlemen? Your earnest money, your tax proration, because the tax proration is important because it's customary in the state of Illinois, County of Cook, that the buyer will get a tax proration from the beginning of the year to the day of closing.
To the day of
Why?
closing.
Because once the closing is consummated and the tax bill becomes due and owing, the seller is completely out of the picture. Even though it is their tax bill for the time period they occupied the property, the county cannot tax you once you're out of the property. So the buyer is compensated now for what they're going to pay for in the future. Usually, depending on when you close, there's a second tax proration, and that is for usually the second installment. Again, that's an installment that really came about during the time frame that the seller owned the property. But again, Mika, after the seller sold the property, the county cannot go back to the previous owner and say you owe us that tax bill. They tax whoever is entitled. So the HUD statement is a summary of all the debits and the credits, and simply the credits will be minus from the purchase price, and that's what you have to bring to the table.
And the property tax proration that you're talking about is very key because Cook County taxes you a year behind, right? We're late.
That's correct.
And so they're putting money in there to compensate for that period that hasn't been taxed yet.
That's
But
technically, yeah, that's a good way to look at
Right.
it. That's a good way to look at it because right now, the first installment of 2016 has been paid,
Mm-hmm.
but out there is the second installment of 2016.
Right.
And logically speaking, we're in calendar year 2017.
Right, exactly. So if you're selling property right now, the buyer is not obligated to pay 2017 taxes for the period in time that the seller owned the property.
Well, not necessarily. The answer is actually yes. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, whoever is entitled, they're responsible for that tax bill. So, circling back to what I said previously, you are compensated in the means of a credit.
Yeah, correct.
It's less money you, the buyer, have to bring to the table. So that's why we use the phrase, you being compensated now, what you have to pay for in the future.
In the future, okay. So those type of numbers are gonna show up on
Exactly.
this settlement. And it's a basic accounting of all the monies and, like you said, the credits and
And the
deduct-
debits.
and the debits that are associated with the
Right.
sale of this property.
Right.
So even some of the county fees, any type of county fees will show up on the project.
As was the state.
The state and
Because we
city.
had to transfer taxes for the state and the county. Again, the customary practice in Cook County is that out of the seller's proceeds, the transfer taxes are paid for the county and the state. For the city of Chicago, if you are in the city of Chicago in terms of the property, it is a uneven split between the seller and the buyer.
Okay, so now we have a clear understanding of that particular document, and that will show up during the closing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Another document that the parties to a sale of real estate need to be aware of, the disclosure statements. And so what is a disclosure? And when we're talking about the sale of
This, ladies and gentlemen, this is very critical. Under the Real Estate Act, you have to disclose if you're knowledgeable of the condition of the property. Now, if you're selling property that may be in probate, it's quite possible that you may not be knowledgeable in terms of the condition of the property. However, if you are knowledgeable of the condition of the property, the Real Estate Disclosure Act forces you to state, for example, is there water in the basement? You know, for example, are you aware of leaks, so forth and so on. Now, this is key, ladies and gentlemen. Unless you're buying the property as is, and the seller knew of a defect, or if you say in the business, should have known of the defect, after closing, it's not over. Because I've had cases where after the fact, so a defect came up that the seller either knew or should have known, and we had to sue them. So again, at the closing, it is critical that you have full disclosure.
Right.
It's something that you reasonably, you being a seller, could not have known of in terms of maybe what we call a latent defect. Then it's quite possible you may not be sued. But it's something obviously that you knew or should have known, the buyer can come after you within the time frame of the statute of limitations.
See.
It doesn't last forever. You have X amount of years to pursue somebody on a real estate transaction.
And in your opinion, isn't it just better to disclose those type of things during the real estate contract than to just kind of keep it hidden and just hope and pray that it doesn't get found out?
Well, you're hoping and praying for the wrong thing. Quite frank with you. As we say, the truth will set you free. Okay, because you have to be careful with that. Because if you know something, you're better off disclosing. And that way, the buyer is being fully notified of what is going on with the property. Because if you take a chance and say, well, Lord, I'm just going to pray they don't find out, you're asking for it.
Right.
Because if something pops up and it's within the time frame of the statute of limitations, you could have a problem.
And a good attorney, the attorney that's representing you on the sale, can assist you in reducing the consequences of that maybe in your mind harmful disclosure by negotiating some extras in
That's
the
quite
sale of
Right.
the sale of the property.
That's quite possible. It may be a compromise in terms of the price, you being a seller because you know something is wrong with the property. That's negotiable.
It's negotiable. So there really isn't any reason to withhold that type of information. There's a way to really disclose it and still get a really good deal for the sale
Absolutely.
of your property.
Absolutely.
So we always encourage people that are selling property to just follow the rules and advise your attorney as to what the condition of the property is so that the attorney can really take advantage of that review period or any type of negotiation prior to closing on
Absolutely.
that property. Okay, so is the disclosure the same as an inspection? Can you give them some explanation?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is key. I like to tell my clients, there's no property, including this marvelous edifice that we're here today, that's completely perfect.
Right.
There's no such thing. A home inspector is going to find something. I advise my clients to be reasonable. Don't nitpick the seller. Okay? The home inspection allows you within X amount of days to inspect the property, with X amount of days to give the seller the inspection report, within X amount of days to state to the seller what, if anything, you want in terms of repairs.
Now, who does the inspection? Is the buyer or the seller?
The buyer.
Okay, the buyer. So is that inspection performed by somebody that they know? What is the
It should be done by a professional.
okay, a
Okay.
professional person?
A professional. There are a lot of home inspectors out there, and usually some realtors will refer you to an inspector that maybe they've recommended folks in the past. But the key is that you have to notify the seller what, if anything, that you find wrong with the property and that you want repaired.
And who pays for the inspection?
The buyer.
The buyer pays for the inspection. Now, and then what is the difference between the inspection and the appraisal?
The appraisal is the market value of the property. Now, the appraisal could consist of comparables. Appraisal could consist of what it would cost today to build that particular property. There are a lot of variables. The appraisal is actually what the appraisal is deeming the fair market value of the property. Again, the home inspection states in detail what, if any, problems are with the home. And again, all inspectors are going to find something.
Okay, so callers, we are at the Cook County Bar Association, and we're doing a live call-in show regarding real estate, part 2. You can contact us at the number that appears at the bottom of your screen. That's 312-738-1060. That's 312-738-1060. Okay, continuing our conversation. The other thing that I wanted to focus on is the inspection has to be an independent person, right?
Exactly.
This can't be your cousin or a relative.
Well, technically, okay, it could be your cousin.
Okay.
It could be your relative.
Okay.
Okay, but the key thing is that it has to have some detail in terms of what they find.
Okay.
And as I tell my clients, also you the buyer, you have to instruct your attorney what you want.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. And then the other aspect of the inspection I want to focus on is the city. Does the city, some of these local entities have inspections that they perform with regards to the property?
It depends. The city of Chicago, no.
Okay.
The only exception with the city of Chicago, say you're building a new house.
Okay.
The city will inspect it.
Okay.
The city will inspect it. Say it's a total rehab. The city will inspect it. Why are they inspecting it? To make sure that the various trades in terms of the city inspectors sign off on the building permit saying everything has been done.
Okay.
Other than that, a existing house is not inspected by the city of Chicago. Now, caveat, in the suburbs, all suburbs have their own jurisdiction in terms of what they do. A lot of suburbs will require, prior to the sale of property, a village inspection. And a lot of suburbs, if they find something wrong, the seller will have to repair it prior to the sale, or some suburbs will allow a bond to be put up saying that the buyer will be responsible for the repairs. So it varies. But there are a lot of municipalities in the Cook County area which will actually inspect the property and will direct the seller to make the repairs prior to the closing, or the buyer taking responsibility within a reasonable time period of the closing to make the necessary repairs.
Now, when the city does their inspection, is that, are they looking for the same type of thing that an individual would be looking for at the, with the individuals, the buyer's inspection?
No.
Okay.
Okay, because the city's inspection is gonna be, you have the carpenter, you have the electrician, you have the plumbing, you have the HPC. These independent disciplines will go through the house to make sure that everything, and we're talking about new construction or a total rehab, they will go through the house to make sure the work that's been done has been done according to code. Also,
Housing codes.
yeah,
That's
building
the
code.
building
Also,
codes.
they'll be looking, not only will they be looking at the building permit, which they have to sign off on, they will actually be looking at the prints. Okay, because if you deviate from the prints, you better have a good explanation as to why you deviated, because the architectural plans have been approved by the city.
Okay.
Because before you have to do new construction or total rehab, the plans have to be approved. And so the general contractor and his or her subs are obligated to follow the plans.
Right, and so that would alleviate, for example, unintended or additional pressure on the water lines, for example.
That's a good possibility.
You know, the city is expecting to have this amount of volume pursuant to the architectural
Right.
plans, and so if they deviate from that, that could put additional pressure on that.
That's true.
Okay,
That's true.
so that's just an example of why the city would want to make sure that the property that is constructed would conform to the plans that were presented.
Actually, and also for plumbing, it's critical for plumbing and electrical that the wall be left open so the inspector can see what's behind the wall.
Very good, very good. Well, this concludes our conversation with Attorney Powell. We got a lot of information, very specific information about details with regards to the sale of real estate that most people aren't discussing, and we want to make sure that our viewing audience tunes in next week to have to participate in our conversation on legal issues, where we will have another member of the Cook County Bar hosting or being a guest to discuss issues of legal importance to the Chicagoland community. We thank the viewers for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next week at this same time. Good night.